on October 26th, 2001, and it was almost got pulled from theaters, but it barely got a theatrical release. And at the time, there was no Netflix, there was no video on demand services, and if you didn't get a theatrical release for your film, specifically after you had a high-profile Sundance debut, the film wouldn't be reviewed by any of the major critics. It would have been dismissed as being not worthy of appraisal in a certain way for reasons that are that was the reality of the time. And so we were able to make it into just enough theaters for it to sort of get enough of an impression, and then it made its way. The movie has found its way over many, many years, and the rights transferred after a 15-year renewal to a company called Arrow Films in the UK, along with the catalog rights of the ownership of the underlying rights that I don't control at all, but the boring process of who owns like the original property. So when they came to me and they said we want to do a restoration, well, the movie's never really been preserved properly, and the image doesn't look quite good enough, and so we were able to spend quite a bit of time last year going into the original negative and cleaning everything up and giving the film microdermabrasion, I guess. Filler, not fillers or cheek implants or anything like that, and just like really like subtle work. No, but it's a new pristine version of the movie that I feel has never been seen before, and we have these technological tools now to do these great things, and the fact that the movie continues to resonate with people, and people are obviously we're all dealing with a very troubling political upheaval in our country, and I think the movie sort of plays differently now in a new way. But that's what art does. It ages, and we age with it, and it outlives us. These movies will be here long after we're all gone, but we're all here tonight, and I'm so grateful for that. It means so much that you're here, and I am happy to talk to anyone and everyone afterwards, and I hope you enjoy the show.
All right, thank you. So stick around.
Thank you.
We'll talk for a long time. Enjoy the show. All right, thank you everybody for sticking around. I would like to, glad you all enjoyed it. I would like to welcome Richard Kelly back to the stage. Please give him a big round of applause. All right. Thanks again for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. You know, that is a film that really holds up beautifully. After 15 years, and you know, a lot of films, especially films that you watch when you're younger and you're an adolescent, and you watch a film and you sort of revisit, and it's like, maybe that's just where I was. With Donnie Darko, it's sort of the opposite of that, which is you watch it and it takes you back to certain feelings that you had as an adolescent. What's it like for you coming back to it after 15 years?
Well, to get to do the restoration felt really cathartic because we were never happy with the way it had been transferred into the digital space or the home entertainment space, and to get to use today's technology to give the celluloid the microdermabrasion. I keep using these really awful plastic surgery metaphors, but that's kind of like what you're going to the celluloid and you're getting in there and you are translating it into the digital space in a way where you see every detail. And we have these projection systems now, and we have 4K TVs and HDR and all this new technology that just makes us able to see things so much more clearly. And but it's still celluloid, right? So it felt really good to be able to go back and preserve what was there. And so it was great. And again, there's so much time in the rearview mirror now that all the anxiety of the box office failure or the the hurdles that we had to jump to get the movie even on just a few screens so many years ago, all that was just so far in the rearview mirror that it's just wonderful just to get to do this. So it was really cathartic, and the fact that there's still an audience for it and that the movie does hold up is gratifying and inspiring to me to keep sticking to my my I guess principles of trying to do original films. You know.
No, that's fantastic. Can you divulge, because I think everybody here, I'm going to speak for the entire audience, thinks it's been too long since there's been a Richard Kelly film in theaters, a new one. Yeah. Can you divulge anything you're working on or give us any hints?
I wish I could. I wish I could talk a lot about all of the stuff I'm working on. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of new movies in the pipeline, and I think it's all really ambitious, and it's a lot of design work and a lot of strategy and a lot of screenwriting. And I've actually gotten sidetracked by writing multiple scripts so that when the next one finally happens, it'll hopefully be a domino effect where there'll be like several happening in succession back to back. So I actually took a lot of this time to do a lot of writing to get the scripts ready so that it'll be a lot more directing in succession. And then when this restoration happened, I ended up moving on to do one more script, and then we knew we were going to have the restoration to kind of remind people of the commercial mainstream viability of these kinds of stories. And so I can hopefully continue making more of these kinds of original stories. So more to come, I promise, but I would get in trouble if I exposed anything more, and I might jinx something. But stay tuned.
You know, watching this, there is so much detail and nuance and little intricacies with the characters, just structure. Now, did I read right that this was the first feature script that you had written ever?
It was.
It's amazing.
Well, thank you, but I spent 23 years writing it. And I spent 28 days typing it. So it was thinking about it for 23 years, going through high school in Virginia, public education. We're all here for public education.
Yes, public education.
All those great English teachers who taught me everything I know. And then I went to USC, which is a private school, at great expense of my family, but I got a scholarship. And so I learned film technique from the School of Cinema Television at USC, and then when I graduated, I had that panic of, I've got to write a movie. I've learned all the technique, and I've got the visual skills, and I've done the short films, but I've got to finally write a feature film. So I waited until I was ready, or I waited until I was so terrified that I was going to give up on the dream unless I tried it. Because I didn't want to fail at my first screenplay. I didn't want it to, finish the script and be depressed that it was just terrible or something. So I just waited and waited and waited until it finally felt right. So
when you finally wrote it, was it just something where it just came out linearly, or did you create a grid, or how did you piece it together?
There's no outlining at that stage because I had spent so much time thinking about it. It had been so outlined in my mind that it came out in a rush. It came out in the exact same time frame you see in the movie, The Tangent Universe of 28 Days. I wrote it in that exact time frame in October of 1998. I started on October 2nd, and I think I finished Halloween night writing it, which was I was sort of living that time frame. And it was just a really organic discovery process, but I felt energized, and I felt like it was working, and it was my mind was sort of all the cylinders were pumping, I guess, in my brain.
No, it's fantastic. Speaking of public and private school, my wife and I were watching it earlier today, and we were wondering if Donnie goes to private school.
Yes, and it's interesting that you say that because it was not originally written to be a Jesuit Catholic school, but this is what happens when you location scout and you have budget issues. We found this beautiful school in Los Angeles called Loyola Marymount, and it's near downtown, and it is a Jesuit Catholic school. And then my costume designer, April Ferry, came to me and she said, Richard, I'm dressing so many 80s extras with 80s wardrobe. Can you please put the kids in uniforms? We will save, we don't have the money. She's like, I can't dress all these kids in 80s clothes. It's killing us. I need to put the money into the Halloween party and we need to give Mary and Drew their shoulder pads and their great 80s wardrobe, and can we please just put the kids in uniforms? It would save us so much money. And I thought about it from a story point of view and the conformity of the educational system, and so it became more of a private Catholic school by virtue of budget and location. And then there's the cross, and then there's Roberta Sparrow, who's a former nun, and then there's The Last Temptation of Christ on the billboard. And so all of a sudden, everyone watches this movie, and they think I'm a Catholic or a lapsed Catholic. And there's this huge Catholic following for the film. I mean, it's like, so apparently I'm a Catholic now. No, but it's sort of like these things happen in the filmmaking process. So, but it kind of worked for the story that it would be a Catholic conservative school that would have that would be kind of corrupted by this interloper self-help guru and banning books and all that kind of stuff. So.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about is about the apocalypse, and the apocalypse in different ways plays very heavily in each of your films. Very different here than it would be in Southland Tales, than it is in Southland Tales. One of the things that this film sort of brings back to me from when I was very young is, speaking politically, the ever-present fear that kept me up very late at night when I was a very young kid, worried that Ronald Reagan was actually going to hit that big red button. Mm-hmm. And I was just wondering if, there's a lot of political iconography in this movie. Is it related to the apocalyptic tone, or is it more related to family dynamic? How does the apocalypse and politics intersect for you?
Well, I mean, the apocalypse is present in all of my movies, and it is an obsession, and it is something where these movies are meant to be cathartic explorations of apocalyptic narratives, possible doomsday scenarios, I guess, and the idea is to explore it in fiction as a way of trying to maybe deal with our anxiety about it happening in real life, or try and prevent it from perhaps happening in real life. And so with this film, it was a very deliberate choice to set it in 1988 on the eve of the election. I knew I had the Halloween carnival and the rabbit costume, but it was very deliberate that it was kind of like this metaphor for the build-up to this election. And when we made the film, it was the year 2000. We shot it in late summer 2000, and we were leading up into an election where George W. Bush was on his way to being elected. And it was like we were approaching another transitional swing of the political pendulum, so to speak, from Clinton into Bush number 2. And so it felt like we were making the film on the eve of an election as well. So it was like this connective tissue between two timelines. And so I kind of more see the movie as like this weird 9/11 film, even though we had no idea that would occur. But it had this strange feeling of impending doom. And I think maybe it was like this idea of this anxiety you feel if the election doesn't turn out the way you hope it will.
Right. Yeah, no, makes sense. I want to talk a little bit about psychotherapy. One of the things that is surprising is that you got Catherine Ross for this, and she was basically sort of in nothing for a long time. Mm-hmm. How did that happen? How did you get Catherine Ross?
I had this idea of trying to get her. I thought she was just so extraordinary in all of these films, and then we hadn't seen her in like probably a decade. And I spoke to our casting director, Joseph Middleton, and I said, I want to try and find Catherine Ross. And so she still had a manager, and we contacted him, and she lives in this beautiful ranch up in Malibu with her husband, Sam Elliott, and horses, and she's had at the time a 15-year-old daughter, and I drove all the way up to Malibu, and she like answered the door like wearing gloves. She was literally like milking or doing suppositories on her horse or something. She was like in the middle of like some serious horse veterinary issue or something, and she was just gorgeous. And she's like, "Oh, Richard," she brought me into this beautiful Malibu estate, and she brought me into her kitchen, and she was sort of just like curious, like, who is this 24-year-old weirdo showing up at her doorstep asking her to come back to acting. And I just sat her down and I said, I pitched her the vision for the movie, and I said, we have Drew Barrymore and we've got this great actor Jake Gyllenhaal, and she was really kind of quiet and pensive and a little standoffish at first, but like so kind and so warm. And I think she eventually just trusted me, and I felt like she had kind of left the business just because she wasn't really getting offered anything that excited her. And I think she told me in great detail that she wanted to raise her daughter, and her daughter was 15, and her daughter was on her way to, being a grown-up and being able to drive her own car. And I think she was sort of thinking, okay, well, maybe I can get back in the game here. So she, again, like all the actors in this movie, she took a huge risk agreeing to be in this really bizarre film from a first-time director. And it was just, it felt like I felt so proud to get her in the movie because she's just a legend.
Yeah. She's fantastic in it. Is she a particular kind of psychotherapist? It feels like her office, there's all sorts of clues all around the office. Did you have something specific in mind?
Well, we built that set. Her office is a set, and we did that in the last week of principal photography. The only sets we built in the movie are her office, both of Donnie's bedrooms, the old bedroom and the new bedroom, because we had to blast a jet engine through it, and the hotel rooms when the parents go to the Holiday Inn, and then Donnie, the Darko family bathroom where you see Frank. Those were our construction pieces for the last week of principal photography on a soundstage in Burbank. And so we did all of Jake and Catherine's stuff in the last week, and it was really intense. And it was good that we waited until the last week because that was Jake's hardest stuff. He had to do all of that therapy stuff in linear narrative, but, it was a non-linear shoot. So we had to map out all of that emotional trajectory between Jake and Catherine on that set. And Alexander Hammond, our production designer, definitely put in a lot of clues about child therapy, like stuffed animals and easel, like finger painting and stuff in the background where you see that she maybe deals with younger children. Because there was definitely going to be a childlike quality to a lot of Jake's hypnotherapy where he reverts into a childlike state, I guess. So it was like a maternal kind of thing. We wanted it to be a very warm, kind of claustrophobic, tunnel-like environment, I guess. So yeah, it was definitely designed pretty specifically, I would say. And the painting that she uses to hypnotize him is my friend Jay Kelly, no relation. He did that light glowing face, that's what she uses to hypnotize him. You don't see that in the movie, but that's the implication. And he went on to do the split American flag 9/11 collage in Southland Tales, that painting that was in Southland Tales.
Yeah. Speaking of clues on walls, there's a brief shot of the calendar in Donnie's bedroom, and it's got a creepy house on it. Mm-hmm. I'm getting into real inside baseball at this point.
I've got your answers.
What are those little things I could ask him about? There's a creepy house on the calendar. That calendar is later covered up by his picture of Frank. Whose house is that?
That house is one of my Uncle Neil's photographs. I think he is an absolutely brilliant photographer. His name's Neil Presley. And he, for 30 some odd years, has done these wonderful black and white photographs of just pastoral, rural landscapes. And he lives in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And so that is one of his photographs. And it is this sort of old, decrepit house somewhere in Pennsylvania is that photograph. So as for the meaning of it, if there is meaning beyond that, I guess it's just open to interpretation. But there are a lot of his photographs throughout the Darko house. There's a lot of artwork in the Darko house. It's very specific. There's some of my paintings. It's all my family's artwork basically in there.
That's great. With Frankie, I'm sorry. There's a scene early on where Holmes Osborne is talking about his classmate, Frankie Fiedler.
Mm-hmm.
And hard not to link that back into Frank. Was Frankie Fiedler related to the story? Was that Frank's father? What is his relation?
That's a mystery I can't reveal entirely yet, but there is something to Frankie. That was a very deliberate line of dialogue delivered by Holmes that was kind of like a mystery for another day in my mind that I had written. But yeah, there is a lot of anagrams, or not anagrams is the wrong word, but the idea of names with two first and last names starting with the same letter. You see it throughout the movie and hidden in places and stuff. But yeah, there's definitely more to that, but it's too much to maybe for another day.
All right. Well, I'll get more general. Speaking of more for another day. Now, with you mentioned that the rights reverted to you after.
No.
Okay.
Not to me. No, I still don't have the rights.
Okay.
Part of the reason I'm sitting here today is because I don't have the rights, and they changed over after 15 years, and the catalog has sold 2 or 3 times, and now Arrow Films acquired the rights to do this restoration,
okay,
which
gotcha.
I'm very grateful for because they're a wonderful company, and they. But in terms of the underlying rights, I relinquished those when I was 24 when I signed the deal to get to direct. Because when you're 24 and you sign a deal to direct a movie, you don't have any leverage because you're getting to direct the damn movie. Right. So, but again, I just my goal is to make sure that no one does anything necessary or unpleasant with this property.
Do you have that opportunity to sort of come back to this universe?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't write the checks.
All right.
But you're here, and I'm here.
One more question before we turn it over. Not a Donnie Darko question. I think many of us are huge fans of Southland Tales, and we keep looking forward to a extended cut of Southland Tales. Can you reveal anything? Is anything in the works?
There is a plan forming. There's the brick mortar has been sort of laid, and the blueprints are in place. We are hopeful that there is going to be a real strategy that we can announce at some point soon. But beyond that, there's still a few more things that need to happen. But I think there's a renewed audience every day building for that film and for more in that world. And our new president is sort of ensuring that audience gets bigger every day. And if I could trade it to have Hillary Clinton in office right now, I would, but we are stuck in this simulation for a while at least. And I'm really, really, more than anything, I want to do a lot more with Southland Tales. And so I'm very thankful that people such as yourself have helped promote that film and bring it back to the big screen. And so stay tuned on that front as well. It's a stepping process of doing this one, and we'll see what happens down the road.
All right, sounds good. I've got 10,000 more questions, but I don't want to hog things, so I want to open it up to the audience. Cecilia has a microphone that these mics are sensitive. You will have to talk directly into it, so please hold it up. If we could take a question, she'll come around to give you the mic. Does anybody have a question? I'll give it to you next. I'm going to give it to Seth because it's right next to Cecilia.
It's not a question, it's just a comment. So I was in high school when this film came out, and this is the first time I'm seeing it. Film came out 15 years ago. It took me 15 years to see it. I kind of have a thing with seen certain movies on the big screen. So I really, it was a fantastic film. I really enjoyed it, and I just wanted to thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. That's very glad you saw it for the first time tonight.
Thank you.
Who else here saw it for the very first time tonight?
Oh, wow.
Wow.
You were missing out.
No, I'm just so glad there's new people. That's great.
Over on the left side of the audience, fourth row back.
Hi. So I was wondering, what were the motivations behind some of the editing changes in this restoration? Like, most specifically, the decision to take out the overlaid images of the book, The Philosophy of Time Travel excerpts?
Oh, no, this is the theatrical cut. We did a restoration on both cuts.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, this is the theatrical cut. And then we also did a huge restoration on the director's cut, which is longer and has all the additional material, the time travel book and stuff in it. So when the Blu-ray comes out in a couple weeks, and then iTunes will have a big package that you can access both cuts on Blu-ray and iTunes. And a new documentary that's about 85 minutes long with new interviews and archival footage and everything. So like the whole package will be available to you. So yeah, it's usually better to start with a theatrical cut, and then if you want a lot more and you want to dig deeper, and you are one of those people, you can really dive into a much longer, more novelistic version of the film. But this one is better for theaters and for an audience like this, I think. And the director's cut is more for like 2 a.m. when you can't sleep and you're like,
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Next, we're going to go 4 rows back. I'll come to you next.
Hey, so I was wondering, what is the movie about?
A nice specific question.
wow.
I think this is a candidate for the extended director's cut next.
I will say, when I was watching it, that lifeline that Beth Grant has drawn, the love and the fear, to me that reminds me of a lot of our culture now, where we are expected to vote like thumbs up or thumbs down on things, right? Just like it's got to be this or that. There's no in between. You have to vote Democrat or Republican. You're hetero or you're homo. Like there's like categories of this polarity that we're not allowed to have this spectrum of it's like this polarization that has happened, and the extreme right and the extreme left. I don't know. It just feels like that's not what the movie's about. I'm just coming up with some answer based on.
Awesome.
I don't know.
Thank you.
I can't. I could never answer that question in any adequate way, and I didn't now either.
I'm going to ask an even harder question to piggyback onto that, which is one of the things I love about the movie, is that it really feels like you are circling and sort of capturing some of the great mysteries of existence, and I think that's the best way that I can put that. And it's like capturing lightning in a bottle. How much does that factor into sort of what the film is about?
In terms of trying to capture mysteries, or the idea of the alchemy of the aesthetics, you mean, of making the film?
Well, I was thinking of existential issues in general, whether that is faith or predestination or fate. Those things are addressed in the film, but they're addressed elusively.
Well, again, maybe to kind of try and answer your question again, the reason why maybe Catholics have really embraced this film, it has a big Catholic following, that it is perhaps about a quest for a divine entity, or confronting God, or confronting one's mortality. And in the director's cut, there is a longer extended sequence with Catherine Ross and Jake Gyllenhaal where she explains the difference between being an atheist and an agnostic, and she clarifies it to him based on their earlier conversation about the search for God being absurd. And I think that was perhaps answering his question in the sense of that's what being an agnostic is having that open door to a possibility. And so the movie is probably a spiritual quest at the end of the day, and it is about confronting a higher power or a designer of some kind. And the time travel stuff is clearly a divine intervention, maybe of some kind, or it could be another technological intervention. I mean, there's a lot at play, I guess. But it's definitely a spiritual film.
It's a very spiritual film. Yeah. Cecilia, let's go over here. I believe she was next, all the way. Oh, please give it back to Cecilia. If you could go over the woman in the gray sweat shirt over there. I'm going to try to. I apologize if I don't get these in order. I'm going to try to make it so Cecilia doesn't have to run around so much. But hang on just one sec. Cecilia.
Who was with a gray sweater?
Hi, I am so stoked you're here tonight. I've watched this film so many times. It's my favorite film. 2 questions for you, and this is probably really nitpicky and specific, and maybe you don't have an answer, but I'm going to ask you because you're here. Okay, in Dr. Thurman's office, that picture on the wall, is that Roberta Sparrow?
Do you mean the glowing woman's face?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
I don't know who that woman is. It's a mystery. I haven't quite figured that out yet. But I explained before, that's my friend Jay Kelly who did that light painting.
Right.
And he's such a brilliant artist. He has like dozens of those paintings that are some are lit from behind and others aren't. And he creates these people from his fantasy. He doesn't base them on real human beings or photographs at all. He actually comes up, he conjures these people's faces just from his imagination, and he builds them out of collage, and they're all like really hot people. Because I think he figures if he's just going to conjure someone out of thin air, they might as well be really hot, which maybe is a little shallow, but whatever. They look like real human beings, and that's why I was compelled to put his art. And he also let us use it for free. But I'll figure out who she is at some point. Before I die, I'll figure that out.
She just reminded me so much of that picture of her on the wall in high school. Just like same kind of.
Oh, Roberta.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that was my first question. And my
Okay.
second question is, again, about Roberta Sparrow. I'm wondering towards the end of the film, when Gretchen Ross gets hit, I noticed that Roberta Sparrow is in the road. And I'm wondering if she was deliberately blocking the path so that all those things would come to pass.
I think absolutely. I think Roberta is not just messing around out there in that
Right.
road.
It just seemed like she was like an
People
orchestrator.
underestimate Roberta. She's not messing around. She's in control. Yeah, she definitely knows what she's doing. There's a lot more to that character, and yeah, she's there for a reason.
Thank you.
All right. Next question. Why don't we go back for Rose? Yes.
Hello. I appreciated, this is, the whatever.
We need you to speak just a little closer.
Hi. Yeah, I guess I'm wondering what the role was for you in writing the story that mental illness played. I thought it was interesting watching it this time and actually hearing what the diagnosis was and then seeing everything as hallucinations perhaps, but then seeing them also kind of come to play in this larger scheme and, trying to figure out what mental illness had to do with that and like what part that took for you.
Well, with respect to the role of mental illness, I think that the movie is, maybe in my mind, it's more of a science fiction film, maybe even a superhero story. Mental illness is clearly a discussion amongst the characters, and Donnie is in therapy, and he is on medication, and his therapist does suggest schizophrenia as a possible diagnosis. But I think that, and this is some more that's explored in the director's cut, is the pills that he's on, the medication is revealed by Catherine Ross to be placebos. She's actually giving him water pills. She's not putting him on medication at all. And she makes a big ethical decision to mislead his parents, and she makes a questionable decision that's probably against her principles, but she does so because I think she's really convinced that there is something supernatural or otherworldly happening to Donnie, and she's not comfortable putting him on any of these medications that obviously came into prominence in the 80s, and now we're dealing with opiate deaths that are higher than car accidents, and we have a huge epidemic of addiction to prescription medication today. So I think it was sort of like I was trying to position Dr. Lillian Thurman as being kind of against this drugging of the youth, and especially with Donnie trying to address his situation with things like hypnotherapy and more like organic behavioral therapy. But I think she did the placebos as a way of trying to trick him into thinking that the pills were going to be helping. So it was a little bit of, science, me suggesting that the therapist was going off path, or, going rogue, so to speak, I guess.
Great, thank you.
The next ones looks like they're kind of in back. Sorry to do that to you. There's a whole bunch of them. We'll get 4 in a row back there. We'll start with that gentleman you're right next to, Cecilia.
Hi. Just want to say that that Donnie Darko is one of my favorite films. I've seen the director's cut so many times, but this is my first time seeing the theatrical cut. It's just pretty interesting. My question is, there are several, actually a couple times where Donnie, he wakes up in the middle of nowhere, like in a golf course, for example, where he seems a bit clueless of how he got there. But at the very, very beginning, right before the title card comes up, he wakes up and he smiles, I noticed. I was wondering if there is any significance of that, of why he's smiling.
I think that was our very first day of principal photography of the whole movie, was that wake up on the cliff. It was very serendipitous and kind of magical. And I remember directing Jake to smile and laugh before he walked off, because it's absurd for someone to wake up in that position, and I think I wanted to let the audience know that there was going to be a lot of humor and comedy in the film, and that this is a character who does have a sense of humor and is ultimately going to die laughing, because he does die laughing really intensely. So it was a link between his laughter at the opening and then at the end before the engine comes in. I think that was what it was.
Thank you.
All right, there were a few more just behind, so the gentleman just behind.
I'm kind of mystified about the function of Charita Chen in the movie.
The function of Charita Chen, a lot of development executives told me to cut her.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, they're like, why do you need her? Get rid of her. And I just fought really hard to keep her in the movie because I think it was a example of someone who was being horribly mistreated or bullied, an outsider, and she doesn't have a lot to say in the movie, but she's very observant, and I think it all builds up to that moment where he sees her in the hallway and he takes off her earmuffs, and he sees her book that has his name on it, kind of where he starts to realize that he's going to leave behind maybe a legacy, or that he has an impact, and his actions have real impact. And so I think, I don't know, it was sort of like there's a lot of nasty, mean things that happen in high school, and there needed to be some kind of victim to all of this bullying and all of this racism or hateful kind of rhetoric that exists in high school. And it was also a counterpart to the sort of everyone putting all this adulation on the teen dance troupe and stuff. So Charita ended up being kind of like this this victim of a lot of abuse, I guess.
Before we go on, I just want to make sure. Do we have time for some more questions?
Yeah, sure.
All right, excellent. Let's keep going back. There were two gentlemen right there. The bearded gentleman.
Hey, Richard.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here. I first saw the theatrical cut when I was in high school, and it completely changed the way that I view movies. I watched it twice. First watching, I watched it immediately again because I was just so blown away, and I felt like I really, really missed something, which I'm sure like a lot of people have felt. So naturally, I went online and I found this like a Donnie Darko website. It was this little interactive website. You could click on things, and it would give you little hints or little excerpts from the philosophy of time travel. So my question for you is, did you or the studios have anything to do with that website? And if not, how did you intend for people to discover the philosophy of time travel, like the written version?
Well, to answer your question, I designed that entire site with a company in London called High Res. They're an amazing web design company. They've been around for quite a while. They did the website for Requiem for a Dream, the Darren Aronofsky film, and then I had written all that time travel book stuff while we were editing the film. I just needed to know what was in the book, and I wanted to build out the mythology, knowing that it would never be able to fit into the theatrical cut of the movie, but I wanted to have it. And then it was all this it was like a deleted scene, or it was deleted graphics that I felt like would be fun for people to explore. So when we got the budget to design a website for the movie, I worked really closely with this company, High Res, in London, to build out that entire website. And yes, the book pages got put into the website as sort of part of the discovery process. So yeah, that was all very much by my design.
Speaking of discovery, I bought a prop manual for the box online, and I was pretty shocked because I figured it was just going to be the cover, and I was pretty shocked that it actually had material inside from the movie that I didn't see anywhere else. Was that, I know several were sold, was that sort of intentional? Was that going to be something else, or was that just sort of a little hidden discovery kind of thing?
Wait, a prop manual from
The box.
From the movie The Box?
Yeah. Your movie.
Right, a manual for the button unit?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, we designed a bunch of stuff for the website on that movie, too. I do these really elaborate websites. The one for Southland Tales didn't get finished because we had no money, and I was doing graphic novels, and I was just had bitten off way more than I could chew. And I think that website even got hacked, and can't even access it anymore. We designed a whole NASA manual for the button unit, and you can access it on the website for the box, along with like short music video films, and there's all sorts of extra stuff. So yeah, but you got a printout of it?
Yeah, I actually have it.
We built the prop. James Marsden has it in that scene when he's in the car before they get hit by the snowplow, and he's flipping through it, I think.
Yeah, no, that's
a long time since I've seen that damn movie. I gotta check that out.
All right, next question, the gentleman behind.
Hello. So first of all, I want to say that I actually first saw this movie when I was in middle school. I was really young. I happened to walk into my brother's room while he was watching it, and I was just like, what the heck are you watching? This is really weird. There's a giant bunny man. I don't understand. And up until now, I would watch it in passing at Halloween parties or just sit and watch it randomly. And I always liked it because it had such a surreal feel to it, and the way that you mapped out the characters and the establishing shots, and just the lighting was just gorgeous, the way that you set it up, and definitely gave kind of a horror feel to it in a way. I guess my question is for you is, did you intend for it to be kind of a mixture or I guess a contrast between surreal and like the mundane of life? But and on top of that, like I kind of noticed like at the very end when there's a shot of Donnie's mother, she's the only one not crying, and that seems like really surreal to me. That she's just smoking a cigarette and like no big deal. Her son just died, so I guess that's my question. Multiple questions.
Well, I don't. As to Mary McDonnell at the end of the film, I don't think she's feeling like it's no big deal. I didn't get that from her performance. I think she's in a state of trauma and shock, but I think she has a strange feeling of her son having crossed over into something bigger, and she has somewhat of a feeling of peace, perhaps, with her son's death, and her connection in seeing Jenna Malone and realizing that they've perhaps both been resurrected. So I think she's awesome at the end of the movie. As for your other question, I just directed my script, and I tried to follow the emotional through line of the whole thing and make it as honest as possible, I guess.
All right. How many more questions do you have?
We can do like maybe 2 more, I guess.
2 more questions. All right. Let's do the woman right there. Yes.
Hi. There was a conversation that Donnie's parents were having in the hotel room early on in the film after the engine fell on the home. Mm-hmm. What exactly did the father say to Donnie's mother? It seemed like kind of low, and I kind of missed it.
He was talking about a memory he had of someone from high school named Frankie Fiedler who died in a car accident. And it reminded him of the idea of his son also dying from a freak accident. It's mostly a memory of that, I think. Yeah.
All right, last question. It had better be a good one.
It can be an okay one. No pressure.
Well, let's
all
see.
Good. All the
I don't know. I don't. Who wants it? Who wants it worse than anybody else? Oh, that guy wants it. He wants it worse than anybody else. So I'm going to give it to him. I apologize to everybody else. We will have a rush line tomorrow. There will be all new questions. So please come back and.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the songs were written into the script. Tears for Fears and Echo and the Bunnymen and NXS in particular. But Tears for Fears was the biggest one that was like rehearsed and choreographed. And we did not have the rights. I had to convince the producers to let me shoot that whole sequence at great risk of us potentially not getting the song or having to replace it with something much cheaper or much less famous. And luckily, I pulled it off and we shot it. And I very quickly said to the editors, please cut this together and put the song to it so I can show it to the producers so they'll calm down. And they won't be so angry with me that I wasted a whole day shooting something that we could never afford or that was never going to make it in the cut of the film. And so when they all saw it cut together to the song, they were blown away by it. And we could actually send it to the band. We sent it to Tears for Fears. They watched it. They loved it. And they wanted to help us. And that set a precedent for all the other bands. So it was like, it set a favored nation's precedent. And then we were also right ahead of the curve. No one was really trying to license 80s music in the year 2000. We were just ahead of the curve. And we were able to pull it off. And it was a lot of negotiation with all the bands, and our music supervisors did a terrific job. But it's like once the first band is like, we're in, it's like they've RSVP'd to the party. And then the other bands hear, oh, they're doing it? Oh, The Cure's doing it? Oh, Echo and the Bunnymen? And then they were all British bands, post-punk, new wave. And it was like almost became like a London thing, UK thing. And it's interesting that the movie really took off in the UK, perhaps because of a lot of this music. But all these musicians have been really generous to me in all of the films, and I think if you're using someone's song well and artfully and tastefully, they're going to be inclined to want to help you. It's just a risk of like wasting a whole day of photography on something that you might not get.
All right. Thank you so much, Richard Kelly.
Thank you for coming. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming.